Meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the CPC. It's being held in the Dawn B. Griffin Room, Harwich Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, Mass. 02645 at 6 p.m. Thursday, December 12th, 2024. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Hearing none. Welcome guest. Approval of the minutes from November 14th, 2024, and December 5th, 2024, with corrections. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Mary. Under new business, I'm going to switch this around a little bit. I'm going to go to section B, discussion of the CPC financials with the representative from Markham. Renee Davis? Renee, sorry, butchered that one. Would you have the floor?
So you can hear me okay. Renee Davis I'm going to say, we were with Powers & Sullivan. So we are the town's independent auditors. We have been for several years under the name Powers & Sullivan. We actually merged with a larger firm last February 1st. The name of that firm was Markham, so I was just introduced under Markham. Most recently, as of November 1st, Markham has merged with CBiz. So same team, same group of people, just want to kind of get that out there so there's no confusion. It's the same company and the same group of people, but now it's going to be under CBiz, C-B-I-Z. But your engagement letter, I think, because of the timing of it, was under Markham. They all work. The emails all work, the phone numbers are the same, and it's the same people. We were called and asked to do an in-depth analysis of your community preservation fund, going back 5 years. So I just wanted to come in tonight to sort of find out what the issues are, what the concerns are, and to explain to you our process and what we plan on doing to make sure before we get into the weeds of it and the details that you are all in agreement with our plan. You should all have in front of you a piece of paper with what we put together as your beginning balances. My understanding is that everyone was comfortable with the balances as of the end of fiscal year 2019. So June 30th, 19, this is what was reported on your general ledger. This is what was reported to the state in your CP2 fund that went to them that year. And it basically tells you what you had for a balance in your community preservation reserve, your open space reserve, your historic preservation reserve, your undesignated other funds, and what you had for encumbrances as of that time. So if we can all agree to that $4,881,990.90, that would be our starting point. The plan then would be for us to go each fiscal year from then, for 5 fiscal years through 2024, and look at the votes that you took that are in your annual town report, right on the town's website, every vote that you've had that was issued, the motion. We'd go from those votes to what happened in the general ledger. So every year, there's an amount that's reserved for 10% of your annual revenues, or as you do it, annual budgeted revenues going into each of the reserved categories to make sure those were recorded properly. If you voted a project, to make sure that money was encumbered and that expenses were charged against that accurately. If you rescinded a project because you didn't spend it all, that it went back into the right bucket, and that the ledgers tied to the votes, and that ties to what was reported to the Commonwealth on your CP2 form. What we would do is sort of lay that out for you so that you can see from here forward what you voted. You'd be able to see what was spent and what's left, with the goal being that you'd be comfortable with what your balances are or what changes need to be made to have your balances accurate on the general ledger as of June 30th, 2024. Does that sound like what everyone wants from us?
Okay, let me go to the board. Want to start with John?
Okay, first I want to say that sounds very sensible to me. It might be the most straightforward thing I've heard from a finance person about how to get from someplace, a known place, to where we are today. It sounds reasonable to me. If it doesn't sound reasonable to other people, I want to hear why. But I do have a question, which is, this bottom number here, $4.9 million almost, that is the sum of the first four items and the encumbrances?
That's everything. That is your total fund balance.
But these are encumbrances as of, this is a total fund balance as of 2019?
Yep.
Is it? And these encumbrances are as of 2019?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then once I go to 2020, right, the year we're gonna start with 2020, you're gonna either, they're staying the same, or you spent them, or you rescinded them and they got closed out.
Got it, thank you.
All set, John? Okay, Mary?
Hi, thank you. So I think it makes sense to start from where we were. We were traditionally getting, just so that you understand how we were operating, we were getting an update from our finance director with what our available balances were, what our revenues were in the existing fiscal year, which we had gotten into the pattern where we were spending anticipated revenue. So we had balances, so say this year we would have been voting for certified balances as of June of '24. We wouldn't touch '25 revenue, we would be voting anticipated revenue for '26. So we had gotten into that process back in 2018, which I think my first year on the board, and that was the first year we did that. So I think that over time, as staff changed, I think that's where sometimes we got a little bit lost in the shuffle. So I think if we have a good starting place to start from, we did. Some of the numbers that we've had in the past just didn't seem sufficient when there were years where we didn't spend all of our anticipated revenues, and there were years that we certainly spent every penny that we had. So it was kind of the issue of the truing up and what was happening post-vote, and as part of the close to go on the CP2s and the CP3s, so.
And I think my role here is, right, I'm not recalculating the tax levy. We
No,
do
no,
that as
understood.
part of the audit, right? But, you have a certain amount that's gone out in the levy, or 3% that comes in.
Right.
And this is what we do, right? We audit, I
Right.
know the Community Preservation Act very, very well. When the money comes in, it doesn't go there's no option. It doesn't go anyplace else.
Right.
So when the state money comes in, the state money comes right off. Anyone can tell you what the money's gonna be for this year. They post it on the state website.
Yep.
That's right.
Right, so we know exactly how the money comes in. It goes to the bank. It comes right into this one fund in the town's general ledger. When the taxes come in, they go into this one fund. Interest, I believe, is probably allocated out to them. I'm not sure about that, but it gets allocated to this fund so that you have some investment earnings on that. Same thing with the expenditures. The only time you would have transfers out, and I did see some transfers out, if there's debt service and the debt is in another fund, you're gonna vote every year to transfer. We have to pay some debt service for another fund, you'd have a transfer out. So it should be very transparent. I think you set up an affordable housing trust, that might be a transfer out, but it ties right into a town meeting. So I think the goal here is to sort of, one, make sure nothing went wrong in the ledger, and two is to sort of shine a light on it, to sort of reconcile that back and say, this was your starting point, you all agree with this, I'm not gonna look back any further
Right.
than this, and say for FY '20, do you agree with what happened and what got reported on the CP2 as of June 30th, '20, and walk that through to '24.
Makes sense.
All set, Mary?
I'm all set.
Kathy?
Yeah, so I think the difference in financial procedures in terms of whether we were using estimated or certified and whatever, got a little confusing there for a while, and different finance directors have had different approaches. So be it, whatever the next, regime decides is the way we'll go. But we've had a couple of things, like we've had some land grants come in that we want to make sure have been recorded correctly. And we've also had an incident where our land bank debt service was accidentally
It was appropriated twice.
twice.
It was, we had a CPC article for it, and it was also included in the budget article, so it got recorded twice in there. So we were trying to make sure
Yep.
that those funds
They
got,
only charged your fund for it once.
No,
Is
they
that-
charged
They
our
charged us
fund
twice.
twice,
It was
so,
voted twice, and they took it out twice, but they couldn't pay it twice. I hope they didn't pay it
no,
twice.
we're hoping that it wasn't.
right, so those are,
Make sure you got your money back.
Yeah,
correct.
that's all.
And to Kathy's point, some of the, making sure that the land bank grant that was supposed to offset, and it was supposed to, if they got the land grant, we were gonna be returned funds. So it was to make sure that those land bank, that land bank grant, when it came in, the land grant got recorded appropriately, so.
So, here's my question. You have one fund on the general ledger that is all community preservation money. If the land bank got a grant, it would have gone into a different fund, right? And then, so you funded the land bank, they get a grant, you should get your money back. How many of those are there? I just need to know what I'm looking for.
Okay, so the land grant is separate from the land bank.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sorry, I
The
misspoke.
land bank debt service is one issue. That was a double dip, so to speak. We want to make sure that it just got recorded correctly. And then there are these things called a land grant, L.A.N.D. And that's a state grant. And that's a reimbursement program for an open space purchase. And so when that comes in, if we are so lucky enough to get, a grant, it goes to the account that was the most restrictive, so it would go back into the open space account.
So it comes into the same fund. It doesn't go into any other fund.
It
Everything-
should not. It should come into the Community Preservation Act
Do you
fund.
know
And
how many of those grants you've gotten?
we've had like at least two,
Okay,
but in the last 5 years, just probably one.
One.
one. Okay.
Yeah, a $400,000 one. So we just want to make sure that it got recorded correctly, so that's all. So it's just a couple of those things that we just want to, make sure. I'm good.
Also, Kathy.
Yep.
Emily,
Thank you so much. I agree, it's reasonable. I'm probably the newest one to the team, so I don't have as much of the history, but I'm just curious in terms of timing, how long does this take? Will it be trued up prior to, say, town meeting this year, or does it take longer than that?
No, it'll be done before then. I have to say, right now, we're a couple weeks before the holidays, so it's crunch time for us in a lot of other ways. But I don't think it's gonna take that much time. Certainly, you will have it done well before town. Like, I'm thinking in January at some point, we would meet the meeting.
perfect.
Got it. Thank you.
All set, Emily.
All set.
Robert,
And you will also reconcile all the individual restricted buckets,
Yes.
so we'll have that, yeah. Okay, thank you. That's it.
all
You
set,
know,
Robert.
I did have one question earlier, and I asked this when
Can I finish off with the
Yep,
board
yeah, go
first?
ahead.
Marcy,
I'm all set, thank you.
okay, thank you. Art,
As a new person on the board, I applaud this piece of paper here. I think this is great. I'm not gonna make any questions that kind of embarrass myself, but I'll just leave it at that. It's great that the work you've done here. And this is, but this is a snapshot in history, right?
This is a date, one date.
One day in history.
And what we're gonna do is walk that forward, so hopefully it's very clear to you all what has happened. And you can trace back your payments to what happened.
It'll avoid Mary having piles of money, figuratively.
All set up.
Paper, trying to figure out what to do.
all set.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, Mary.
I just had one, I guess, technical question, because this, I guess I've never known the answer to the question. When we were spending anticipated revenues, and we were doing lowball estimates, right, on what if we thought we were gonna get 3.1 million and we did 10%, we might have done 300,000 or done 280. At year end, when the actual revenues come in, would that ever get trued up? So that we know that we are actually spending the 10%, allocating the full amount of the 10% that we should be allocating?
That was the question that I had earlier
Yeah.
today. So you get all the money, right? It's
Yeah.
just what, the question is, just to be very clear about this, you get all the revenue,
Yeah.
but 10% of the revenue has to go to the three buckets.
Correct.
Right? So you have to put 3, and then there's sort of the undesignated that you can spend on any of those and some other
Right.
things. So you have done it based on estimated revenues, based on your tax recap estimated receipts, which are very conservative. There has never been well, okay, I'm gonna say, when I looked at the beginning balances, I believe that there has not been a true-up. So I don't want to be misleading. That doesn't mean that you didn't get all of your revenues. The worst that would happen there is that the amounts that are in the specific buckets are understated and your undesignated is overstated. It's just a matter of
Sure.
allocation.
Thank
Doesn't
you.
mean
That
didn't
makes
get
sense.
revenue.
And that was exactly
Yeah.
what most of our concern has been, because it didn't feel like, at some point when there was a change in staff, it didn't feel like that true-up was happening. And I guess wrongfully assumed that true-up should have happened or was happening on a going forward basis. And some of the newer staff members were saying, no, it wasn't. And my concern was that, yes, we're spending the money, but we wanted to make sure that we're spending enough.
So it's right, it's a matter of, did you not reserve enough in the
Exactly.
three buckets?
And that was where our concern, well, that was part of my concern when we were
I'll look
going
into
through
that.
this.
I did just quickly look up, the CPA law says revenue. It doesn't say estimated revenue.
Right, right.
Does say revenue, doesn't say estimated, but before I've gone through all of it, let me just make sure there wasn't a true-up. Your town meeting vote is all based on estimated revenue.
Exactly.
Put the money
Right.
into those buckets.
Exactly.
I will verify that, and what we can do pretty easily and pretty quickly is say, because it says right on your recap what your real receipts were, if you put in based on estimate, but your real revenue is almost always higher than that, what would the difference have been?
Right.
And then if you wish, you could go to town meeting this year and say, we think we were under, so we'd like to take this much money from undesignated, which has quite a bit of money,
Yeah.
and let's put it into the designated buckets to make sure we're being
And
very
then we at least know we're starting from
Yeah.
scratch,
It's a
going forward, because, yeah, that was one of, I think that was one of the concerns that we had over a few meetings, so thank you for that. I appreciate that.
All set.
All set, thank you.
Hold on for 1 second, Jim. John?
So my question is, why do we need, if there was an undercount on the buckets previously, basically non-compliance in some manner or another, why is a town meeting vote required? Why isn't it just an accounting step to correct that mistake?
To move, I think all of your transfers of money usually go through town meeting. The amounts that you're putting into your reserve, I'm not a lawyer, do I know that they can't just do it
Yes, it
without
does. In the
town
very
meeting?
beginning of town meeting, at the stipulation, when they get to the CPC, those numbers are always up front.
I know they're there,
Yep.
I read them, they're in your votes. The legal part of it, is it a correction of an error that can be done without that? I don't know, I don't want to give you legal advice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the board? Jim, what do you need?
Interest.
That's right.
Interest that's getting allocated to the fund, is there a question?
For
on-
more monies,
Mm.
I want to see if the line said the interest was X. We get interest on our fund.
You do, and it's recorded on the ledger. Do you not get that report?
We're not sure, I'm not sure.
We do now.
I can see it.
We
When
do
I
not.
looked at the general ledger.
The
I can
Munis
see it.
report we do now.
Okay.
That was a request.
Just want to make sure that it's part of
Yep.
the,
Has she seen this?
Yes, I gave her,
Okay. So the standard Carol.
yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's allocated or if it's actually the money's in a separate bank account, but I'll verify that. It doesn't legally, I don't think they have to keep it in separate bank accounts, as long as they're allocating your proportionate share of interest to you, and you agree with that, that's typically what would happen.
That would be a curious, whether or not we have multiple accounts for that. It was explained to me at one point in time that there were. I kind of find that interesting, to say the least. Mary?
I thought some of the CPC funds, if not all, were in trust funds. There might have been certain designated trust funds for them, and I don't
It
know.
could be, I can verify that.
yep.
If that's the case, then very easy, any interest that came in on those
Yeah.
goes to you. If not, they have to have an allocation, a way to allocate that out.
Okay.
Usually the banks would do that for them.
Great, thank you.
Is there any other questions from Marcy?
I know, thank you, you mentioned that you're going to verify the questions that the board had. When will we get those answers back? Do we set up a date so we find
Well,
out?
Go ahead.
I don't know that I know the answer to that now. The plan is that we would go through this and come up with we may have some questions in the meantime, and I think the questions would tend to probably go back to finance if we find anything. But usually we would come back at one point and report everything back to you. So I'd go through and answer the few things that we've talked about, give you, and what I'm glad that you like that, but really you'd end up with one of these as of June 30th, 2024, and sort of a walkthrough of how you got there and tell the story. So probably towards the end of January is my guess.
All right, thank you.
All set.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay?
I'm looking forward to working with you. The board is looking forward to working. Anything that you need, just ask.
Well, hopefully it will be straightforward. I hear your questions. I understand there's been a lot of turnover, and just getting a really fresh look, seems to make a lot of sense. If you need me, I left a few copies of my
Yes.
card. If you need me, you can get me through the town. Town administrator knows how to reach me, and you have my card, you can reach out to me directly.
All right?
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you all.
coming. Looking forward to the information. Okay, next. It says vote on the whiff. It's going to be a discussion on the whiff and possible vote if we want to do it that way. We have discussed this for the past couple of years, at least a year and a half. And the point behind this is the Board of Selectmen had a discussion a couple of Mondays back. And in that discussion, they were talking about taking a percentage of the CPC funding and putting it towards wastewater. An account within wastewater, or however they were gonna do it. And I guess that name of that is WIFF. I don't know what that acronym stands for. Neither does anybody else on the
We
board.
got wastewater improvement.
Improvement
Should there be infrastructure? But
Infrastructure.
would-
It's the wastewater,
Please
Julie
identify yourself.
Kavanaugh, sorry, Chair of the Select Board. Wastewater, now I'm going to mess it up, Infrastructure Investment Fund, I believe is the accurate representation of the acronym.
Okay, thank you, Julie. So, I put it on the docket tonight for us to have a discussion on this, to whether or not we would support this type of process happening.
Where?
It's right there.
Here's another agenda. There was
So-
two agendas.
I'm on another
So,
one.
it's there, it's at Town Hall. Okay, does anybody want to open this up?
The question.
The question.
Can you explain exactly what would happen? What money is
Okay.
going to be diverted and stuff
So,
like that?
as I understand it, they would take a percentage of the levy and put it into this wastewater account. Not only the levy, but whatever the percent they decide, it would also include a percentage of the state money and any interest that we get on that money.
It couldn't be the state money, that's CPA money. I mean, that won't come.
It's
No, but I mean,
all
it won't
CPA
come,
money.
but it won't come.
I can't argue the point, I'm just telling you what the setup is, what they're looking at. So,
And they're asking to divert half of it, a full half of it?
my understanding is it could be a third, it could be the full amount, it could be half.
And is that,
They need to decide that amongst themselves.
okay, and that has to go before the town meeting, I assume?
That
change
has to go before,
allocation?
well, they'll vote it, finance committee votes it, goes to town meeting, and then it has to go out for a general vote to the public, as I understand it, whether or not, I'm not an attorney, there's no Esquire after my name, so that's what I understand. Julie, you have the floor.
Julie Kavanaugh again. I'm just pointing out that the board was interested in your feedback on it. We haven't made any decisions on how we're going to proceed. We had a presentation back, I think it was June or July. It's taken a portion of the land bank monies. But again, the board hasn't made any determination on whether we will move forward with it or, and if we did, how that would look. So It's really to get your feedback as well. So, and I do not have all the specifics, trust me.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
John?
So I have questions. One is this something that is provided for in the act? That is, and can someone explain to me more than just a yes or no to that if it is provided for, how? That's my first question. Let me just spit out the other one, which is, I mean, half or maybe even all of CPA funds every year isn't gonna make much of a dent in the actual cost of doing this. So I guess my question is, what effect does this have on the budget? And would this be money spent, is the intention to spend this money on debt service as opposed to direct capital investment? If that question makes sense.
And I understand it. For the law part of it, Mary?
So, my experience with it is how Yarmouth had done it. The one thing with the way Yarmouth did it was they were concerned with, when they did the WIFI, they wanted to make sure that they were still gonna maximize the 3% and still get the 3%. So Yarmouth had done 2 separate articles, one with the WIF and then also did a tax offset up to, I think the over-under was $1 million. You would probably come out close to revenue neutral, or you were still gonna pay more in taxes based on the WIF and keeping the CPA at the 3% so that you could maximize your state reimbursements. So I haven't seen enough of what you folks have talked about to know whether you're trying to do it similarly or not.
John?
Just a question on what Mary just said, which is, so if a town were to decide to divert all 3% to wastewater infrastructure, then does that mean that there's no matching funds for the state? Is that what you're saying? And
So that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying the way Yarmouth did it, if I remember correctly, because it was right when I got there, it was to set up the WIFI account, so that you could make deposits into it. They didn't reduce, I don't believe that they reduced the CPA percentage because they wanted to maximize the state reimbursement on it, but then they coupled it with a tax offset up to a certain amount on the tax, on the yearly taxes on properties under $1 million. So that's why I'm just curious whether you were looking at the same setup or whether it was something different, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, folks. Joe Powers, Town Administrator, and promised the chair that I would help tap out and be part of this conversation. What the town, in this instance is me as Town Administrator with the Finance Director, are contemplating are funding sources for upcoming and ongoing wastewater projects. One of the ways you do that is with a WIF. You can do that for water projects, you can do it for wastewater projects. What I've never envisioned, and this, I think you know, Mr. Chairman, goes back to our Finance Director 3 years ago, Carol Capola, and I, working through the Select Board at the time to contemplate this matter. What we're never contemplating is a tax increase, and that's something that I think the current Select Board shares. There's little appetite to create a new tax or new tax surcharge. So what is being contemplated is similar to Yarmouth, but I think there are other better examples out there where other communities have taken a portion of the tax surcharge that went to CPA to divert a portion of that, 1%, in most cases, to fund the WIF. So the select board is contemplating the WIF as a future funding source for wastewater projects. The select board is not contemplating a new tax or an additional tax. No one is contemplating eliminating CPA or anything of that nature. So the commentary that I've been talking about for 3 years through council and finance is, does the town want to establish a WIF? And if so, how do we want to fund it? It has to be through a surcharge. And so the only surcharge I'm contemplating would be to redirect a portion of CPA funds. And I believe the chair is authorized to have us here, to have this conversation with you, so that the select board can get your thoughts on the matter. So we wouldn't be looking to do, and I believe what Yarmouth did was they diverted a percentage of CPA and augmented with an additional tax surcharge.
They may have.
I want to remain clear, the town of Harwich is not contemplating any new taxes whatsoever in this regard.
As far as the CPC is concerned.
No, as far as any new tax. If the board's going to do, if the town's going to do anything on the funds to supplement a WIF, it would come from existing tax surcharges. The only one we've contemplated to date is a portion of CPA funds.
So if you're presuming 1% diverted into the WIF, it would be, the CPA would then have 2%
Correct.
remaining.
Generally
plus-
speaking,
Plus
correct.
state revenue, and hopefully would still be in a position that would be able to max out our state revenue.
Correct.
Received.
It could also be less than 1%, well, actually, no, I believe it needs to be 1% or more. There are other potentials that we could do. If this is, if the CPA concept, if you will, doesn't work for you folks, then it doesn't work for the select board. There could be other tax revenue that are available. I don't want to throw out those scenarios yet, because the only thing that's been talked about at the board level that's been vetted by council and finance over the years is establishing a WIF and taking a portion of CPA funds and redirecting it.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. John?
just seeking to clarify further,
Mhm.
the WIF is a completely independent thing, is this correct, from CPA funding? The town could, if the town chose, keep the 3% CPA, establish a WIF, and
And a separate surcharge to fund it.
a separate surcharge. So they're different things. It's not like there's any direct way that you're impacting directly the CPA funds. It's just the select board would decide they're not going to go beyond a 3% surcharge. So if the town wants to establish a WIF, there's going to be a compensating reduction. That would be what would be proposed to town meeting, was a compensating reduction in the CPA.
If
Is
that's
that
the way the
correct?
conversation goes, the pertinent matter for the select board through administration and finance is if they want to establish this separate fund, which is dedicated to funding wastewater projects, is to identify a surcharge at the town level. I think I'm on very solid ground indicating that there's no effort to raise taxes or to create new taxes. Otherwise, where the funds come from is part of the discussion you're having tonight.
Kathy?
Okay. The chair asked me to think about this a little before this meeting, so I took some notes. I'm not going to speak to sort of the legality or the numbers. I'm going to talk about the soul of CPA funding. First, that any changes in the percentage would affect future funding from the tax levy, not any funds that are currently encumbered, allocated, or sitting in any CPA accounts due to differences in financial reporting procedures, et cetera. The current levy is 3%, which brings in approximately $1.6 million a year, right now. And annually, we receive requests in the amount of anywhere from $2 to $3 million from applicants. These applications are primarily from Town of Harwich departments, commissions, organizations, et cetera. Dropping the percentage by 1% would decrease the available CPA funding by about $530,000, okay, annually. That money represents a drop in the bucket in the wastewater funding needs, but would have a huge impact on what we can do for the town of Harwich taxpayers. The Town of Harwich Affordable Housing Trust has been supported with over $2.5 million in funds since its inception. The South Harwich Meeting House would not have been restored without the $650,000 in funding from CPA funds. The Brooks Free Library would not have gotten painted and its columns restored had not CPA funds had been used to the tune of over $700,000. The new foundation that has shored up the Brooks Academy Museum happened because of the CPA funding, over $1 million. Cemeteries have been spiffed up with new railings, preservation, repair of gravestones have taken place, and the flag installation at Evergreen Cemetery honoring all of our fallen soldiers is due in large part to CPA funding. Playgrounds, softball fields, baseball fields, tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball courts, bike crossing lights, and bocce courts have been improved, restored, rehabilitated, or created with CPA funding. White House Field, our home of the Harwich Mariners, has had significant improvements over the last 20 years because of CPA funding. Historical collections have been preserved for posterity because of CPA funding, as well as the Elmer Kroll barn. The old firehouse has been lovingly restored with taxpayer support of CPA funding. And over 125 acres of land have been purchased by the town or in partnership with Harwich Conservation Trust have been preserved from development for the enjoyment of all citizens of the town of Harwich. This source of funding is important to the taxpayers of the town of Harwich to take care of the things that make Harwich a great place to live and raise children in. And that's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Kathy. Anything else?
Nope.
Emily?
I'll start right now. Thank you.
Marcy?
I like what Kathy had to say, and I agree with her. Nothing else at this time.
Robert?
Yeah. You actually stole my thunder.
Ooh, sorry. Sorry, Bob.
Because you mentioned a lot of historical stuff. And as representative of historic, I have documented, as you have, a lot of these items. Brooks Academy, since it started in 2004, approximately $2.2 million have been allocated and spent. The South Harwich Meeting House, 544 is what I came up with. Brooks Library, 600,000, plus another 100,000 for restoring archives, Rogers and all that. The Kroll Barn, 140,000, and that definitely I could see have been done. And that's been a nationwide attraction. We get comments from all over the country on that. Cemetery, 380,000 on restoration of stones, fences, plus the 256,000 for the Veterans Memorial. Fire station, 350,000 just for the historic restoration, not to mention the apartments. And even Chase Library, $40,000 over the years for lots of little things, leaking chimneys, doors falling off, and things. And can you imagine if we didn't have that little extra money for them? That may not exist today. They may not be able to maintain that building. Now, I got to bring up another thing that only us that are over 65 years old will know, and that, it's coming. The Exchange Building. Algernon Gunn in 1958 had done a substantial study on bringing the Exchange Building really up to snuff. They were going to repair the exterior, rotting facades, and paint. Interior floors and walls were going to be redone. Bathrooms were going to be put in. They only had one men's room and one woman's room with one toilet. They were going to replace the heating plant. It was coal. And there was one corner of the foundation that was sagging. All this in 1958 could have been done for $121,640. So as an aficionado of the Exchange Building and historian, I said, I do a lot of what ifs. What if this happened? What if that? And I said, well, what if the CPA existed back then? What would that mean? Well, that $121,000 in 2024 dollars is $1.328 million, only a little over $1 million, and compared to what and that's about what we're spending just immediately on the Brooks Academy. So if we force to cut a third or a half of our funding, a lot of these projects will probably, yes, we'll always probably put money into Brooks Academy, but not necessarily Chase Library. Certainly, we may not have done the Kroll Barn and all these items. So I'm worried that if we cut money out now, and just from a historic standpoint, something doesn't get done that could have been done. And you know how hard it is to go through the capital budgeting process. You got to plan out 5 years, and even that doesn't guarantee anything. So I want to say is, what is the Exchange building today that's not going to exist 50 years ago? And 50 years ago, we look back and say, what if? What if we didn't cut the money for CPC? We would still have that asset now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Art?
I'd like to ditto what Kathy said, and I'd like to add my own comment. I'm trying to figure out whose idea it was this to pick on CPC, low-hanging fruit, I guess. If we're going to, basically it's a tax, and why not the town administration spread the pain around and everyone contribute? All departments contribute. Why should it be CPC? Let's, if it's a good idea to, obviously, sewer is an excellent idea, we have to do it, and I'm for it, but let's spend the pain around and tax every department in town, not picking on CPC. We're doing good work here, and like all the other departments are doing good work, so we're equal. So let's spread the pain. That's my comment.
Thank you. Okay, I guess it's my turn. Mr. Administrator, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I'm not going to get into any of the prior speakers per se, but I think if we're devolving this conversation into the town administration, as was stated, picking on CPC, I'm going to try to be clearer than I was before. The town is contemplating funding sources for wastewater projects for the future. If it's the desire of this committee to not support the redirection of the CPA, the effort may continue on for other sources. But to present this as the town picking on CPA couldn't be further from the truth, so I just would want to try to cleanse the palate of the record by saying that. Thank you.
Thank you. My comment to the situation. I look at the overall breadth of what CPA has done for the town of Harwich. It's on our website. It's created a tremendous amount of access for the taxpayers of this town for different venues that they want, and they approve at town meeting. We just make the recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. So it's up to the Board of Selectmen to decide how they're going to handle this process. As far as the tax rate's concerned, quite frankly, whether or not the CPC it goes on and whatever the CPC decides, the taxes in this town are going up. Anybody can see that. 4 years ago, 3 years ago, the tax number on the wastewater was $350 million. If this town is going to develop on into the future, you have to get together with another town or has to build a wastewater facility itself, it's going to be in the millions. So that's the reality of the situation. Now, half of this waste, if you take half the money from CPC, or you take the entire amount, based on those numbers, and that's not something that's contrived in my head, it's not going to put a dent into what the taxpayers are gonna pay in this town for wastewater. With an unfunded mandate, that's what we're working with. The town, again, I'm happy it's gonna go to town meeting, because whether or not the Board of Selectmen decide or not, the final analysis is gonna be done at town meeting. Town meeting will decide which way it goes. I've said enough.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As a member of the CPC, it would be a tough pill to swallow for me personally to see our revenue reduced. I will admit that freely. However, I can't leave it unsaid that CPA funds are a common way to fund a WIF. Like, it's not, this isn't, Harwich isn't the only one that's contemplated it. Like I said, Yarmouth did it 4 years ago in perhaps a different way. And as the town administrator rightfully put and clarified my own recollection, they did. They added an additional tax on all properties and then did an abatement or an exemption for those properties up to $1 million to try and make it revenue neutral for the bulk of the lower, tax assessments. As I recall correctly, at the talk of the time, it was the over-under was an assessment at $1 million. We're gonna pay more because of the other assessment, but they tried to make it revenue neutral. The town administrator says that there are other ways that have been done across the state. I'm sure there have been, and we're not the first one to do it. So I don't want to leave this board and the general public thinking that this is like, they're jumping into our back pockets. It's a common way to fund the wastewater infrastructure improvement fund. So I also don't think we should feel like, they're coming after us. It's not. Wastewater is a nightmare for all of us, particularly on Cape Cod.
Yes, it is.
Because none of us did it in the 70s when the rest of us off Cape did, and there was federal funds available to do it. So people thought at the time, rightfully or wrongfully so, that if we kicked the can, no development would happen. We see that didn't happen, so now we're paying for it. And we have to pay for it. So what in Marlborough and Braintree and all of our other communities were paid for with federal funds that didn't come out of our taxpayers' pockets, now we unfortunately have to pay the bill. And it's 40 years later.
Don't take this personal. If it's federal funding, it's coming out of our pockets.
I don't disagree, but it wasn't being funded through our tax levies and our annual real estate tax bills.
And understood. I'm not putting the emphasis on what administration's trying to do. What I'm saying overall is, no matter what, this town, I live in the town of Harwich, not in the town of Yarmouth. Our tax is gonna be increased because of this wastewater situation.
Everyone on Cape Cod is being increased
So we're
because of
gonna
the
have to deal
wastewater
with it.
situation. I just can't leave it unsaid for the public watching that it's not a unique ask or a unique
that.
expectation, so.
Understood.
So I just wanted that out there.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody? John?
I'd like to make a comment. I pretty much sign up to what Kathy and Bob had to say specifically, but I'd like to focus on the environmental part of this. Now, the reason we're in the pickle we're in, as far as wastewater goes, is the severe degradation of our environment due to all the development that's happened in Harwich and on Cape Cod in general. And we need to do that. There's no question we need to follow through and do that. However, there are other aspects of protecting the environment that don't get as much attention. And some of those things, the only funding they get is through CPC. And already, there's competition for money, for recreation, for historical preservation. But in my mind, the bottom line, the most important thing is protecting the environment and preserving what we haven't already destroyed. And we should have, I don't like the idea of taking any of the funding from CPC because exactly that. You know, however, people's priorities shift, but the reason CPC is here, as I understand it, is to fund things that would never get funded out of the normal budget. And I view things like open space acquisition and other environmental related things as things that don't get sufficient attention otherwise in the town. The town does not prioritize spending on those kinds of things. So the only way, I think, the CPC is a very important vehicle for funding things like that. And, you know, really, $1.5 million every year is not that much money, and we should try to focus on spending a reasonable amount of that money on protecting our environment, and cutting into that by $500 or $1 million every year is going to make that way more difficult. Right? Thank you.
And, well, the other thought I'd like to say to the board is we fund the housing trust 500,000 plus every year. If half of that money disappears, or the entire amount disappears, then what's the housing trust gonna do? You're gonna have to fund an article on town meeting floor to fund that trust? Just a question. What happens then? Anyway, anybody else would like to speak to this subject? Okay, now, with the board's consent, I'd rather not call for a vote on this tonight, even though it's in the agenda. I would like to hear what the Board of Selectmen have to say about this particular topic. They're gonna hear our discussion, and I'd like to have their reaction to it. Can I get a consensus from the board to take that direction?
I don't think anybody in this room doesn't understand what we're saying. I think everybody knows where we're coming from.
Okay,
I mean,
so,
vote or not, it's pretty clear.
we'll move on then. With the permission of the board, we'll move on. Okay, thank you.
Disappearing funds, that sounds
Okay, I guess I kind of blew up my apologies, Eric. And, yeah, anyway, Lower Cape Housing Institute funding project. Amount requested, $10,000.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me a couple minutes of your time.
Would you identify yourself, please?
I was just getting to that, absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. My name is Amanda Bebrin. I'm the Director of Housing Advocacy at the Community Development Partnership, or CDP. And I'm here to speak to our request for $10,000 for the Lower Cape Housing Institute. And I'll just briefly give you a quick and dirty of what that looks like, and then I'm happy to take any questions. So the Lower Cape Housing Institute was born in 2017 out of an acknowledgement that while we have really tremendous volunteers who are dedicated to lots of different aspects of our towns and serve in town government, that housing specifically is a really tricky sort of thing, and that enthusiasm doesn't always necessarily translate into really specialized knowledge. So to help support town capacity, the CDP put together the Housing Institute. Originally, this was a pretty traditional 6-week sit-down course, and at the end we got a little certificate. And then throughout the pandemic, it evolved to being a series of, first it was hybrid, and now it's Zoom workshops. So this is education, resources, and support for municipal officials, both elected and appointed officials and town staff as interested. And we do that in sort of 2 different buckets. One is through a series of housing workshops from Housing 101, which we do every year, and then we pick a series of advanced topics that change and react to trends that we see emerging across the region. Things that are special niche topics that we think the towns could use some more help or use a little bit more guidance on. And so these run with the sort of school year. We understand that our board and committee members are often juggling a lot, and so we usually pause for July and August. So from September to May, We follow the town meeting schedule. We do a number of different workshops. This year, we started with Housing 101. Last month, we did a session on best practices in RFPs and developer selection that was really well attended. In January, we're going to talk about wastewater and housing our friends. We are going to talk about community land trusts and 40R or smart growth. And so these were all things that for the 8 Lower and Outer Cape towns, I heard that people were interested in hearing more about. They were having trouble finding resources, or that they're things that are up and coming, and we'd like to preview so that people know what tools are available to them. So the workshops are one half of the curriculum. The other half of the curriculum is peer groups. Previously, we did these sub-regionally, so we had a Lower Cape peer group and an Outer Cape peer group. I started about a year and a half ago, and the first peer groups that I ran, both peer groups spent the entire time asking what the other people were doing. So this year, we're doing all of the peer groups regionally. Our towns often work in silos. I don't think I have to tell you that like we are all working on really great things, but we don't always have the container for towns to be able to talk to each other and collaborate across town lines. So peer group is a sort of less formal space for housing staff, board and committee members, and housing advocates to be able to share ideas, to share best practices, to keep everybody from having to reinvent the wheel, to commiserate sometimes because housing is very challenging and we're pushing that rock uphill every single day. And to update people, we use it sometimes as a mini workshop if there's something that doesn't take 90 minutes to get through. For example, the Affordable Homes Act, we used our fall regional peer group meeting to do an update on what the Affordable Homes Act and the seasonal communities designation was. So those are the two sort of buckets explicitly of our curriculum, and then behind the scenes, me and my team provide a tremendous amount of technical assistance to board and committee members and to town staff alike. Excuse me. And so that can be everything from, I have a question about this specific topic. Can you explain it to me? Can you help me find resources about it? And we do that. I have a question about data or a data set or trends. Can you help us find that? And we'll go chase it down, or we'll direct them to someone who can. We also help a lot with like leadership development. Being an effective board and committee member takes a little bit of practice. If you haven't done it before, it takes a little bit of skill to know how to wield being in this seat effectively. And so I help support our 8 Lower and Outer Cape municipal officials in that way as well. So we are seeking funding for year 9 of this program. I think we have a good sense of, you know, both how we get at sort of beginner sort of topics. We offer Housing 101 every year, and then how we adapt and help capture some of the more advanced things that, you know, 200 or 300 level courses, if you'd like to call it that. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to the board.
Sure.
Art?
I'm just gonna say that I've attended most of your earlier Housing Institute, and they were well received and they were well presented, and I learned a lot. And for me, that was a big challenge. Thank you for your presentation.
All set up. Marcy?
On Arts Day, I've also attended your peer groups, and they've been very informative. I love the fact that all the towns come together and talk about their progress in relation to housing.
Yeah.
And I think that's just valuable, really valuable. So thank you.
Nice to see you yesterday.
Thank you.
All set. Robert?
Your funding does come from all the towns typically. And does it usually come through CPC?
Yes, I should have mentioned that. We make the same request to all of the other 7 CPCs across the Lower and Outer Cape as well, so I get to take the show on the road for a couple of months every winter. But historically, every town in Lower and Outer Cape since 2017 has provided CPC funding, and we are really grateful for that.
Thank you.
All set, Bob. Emily?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Curious, have you tracked participation over the 9 years and seen increases? And then the second part of my question is there opportunity, or have you created evergreen content out of this? And can you capture it and have a library of some of that, so you're maybe not repeating some of the courses that you've done previously, and can add new opportunities or new topics in there for people to kind of consume on their own time?
Through the chair, yes, both great questions. So all of our workshops are recorded. We have a YouTube channel. And so Housing 101 is the only thing that we repeat because we think it's we really want to catch new board and committee members and give them an opportunity to dialogue with somebody instead of just giving them homework to go watch. But yes, many of the sessions that we've already done in the past, unless they're super crazy popular and in demand, or like something comes up in real time that we're like, oh, we should talk about that again, we do try to vary the topics because there's a lot to talk about in housing. We also do have an advancement coordinator and a contract with a company that does social media. And so we do little tidbits of, this is what affordable housing means, like big A versus small A. This is what SHI means. You know, did you know that this many towns on the Cape have hit that 10%? So yeah, we try to hit it in a lot of different ways.
Awesome, thank you.
All set.
Awesome.
Emily? John?
No comments or questions, thank you.
Kathy? Kathy?
Yes, okay. Mary, thank you. Poor Kathy, I'm feeling bad for her
I
right now.
looked at her and then I
Okay.
went right to you. My apologies.
Just to follow up on what Emily had asked, have you tracked participation from Harwich? Do we know what that engagement has been?
Yeah.
Over time?
Which numbers would you like? I pulled lots of them. So the all-time Harwich attendance is 49 people. The spreadsheet I have, I think, goes back to, I don't know if it goes back to 2017, I think it goes back to 2019. We were doing paper attendance for a while. So this calendar year, unique attendance for the entire region is 122 people. This entire year for Harwich, unique attendees is 9 people plus 4 registrants, so people who signed up but didn't attend. I can keep going. I have lots of other different slices. In my October program report, I did talk about that Harwich's attendance is low, and I agree that that's something that I would love to see bolstered. And if you'd like me to talk about some of the ways that we do outreach and what I would love to see from you as a
That would be
committee.
great.
Sure. Okay. So ways that we put the word out. So for every single opportunity, I do a specific email blast to all of our previous attendees. Every town has a town captain. In Harwich, it's Brianna Powell, and so I email all of them specifically. There's a flyer for every session, and I say, can you please distribute the flyer to all of your housing-related boards and committees? And I know that she does that as well. Those flyers go on social media. They're on our website. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to about 800 people that highlights all of these opportunities as well. I will also do individual outreach to committee chairs, to new staff. I had a great conversation with Christine Flynn when she started, to people who just, you know, I know their names and I haven't seen their faces, and sometimes an individual invitation does make a difference. What are some of the other things that we do? It goes on our social media. Last month, I actually printed out the curriculum and the latest flyer in hard copy and did cover letters. I hope one came to you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I dropped them off with your town administrator, and he said that he would distribute them. So we do try to get it out in a lot of different ways. I will say that for the towns that do send a lot of people, it's sort of like the call is coming from inside the house. Like, I get a million emails in my inbox every single day, and I'm sure that there are lots of people from Harwich on my email list, and I'm probably just another like thing in their box. I have found that when committee chairs, town staff help and send it out and say, hey, I went to one of these sessions and I found it really valuable. If you have time, I would really recommend that you attend. And you get like a couple of different people sending it, you know, you have to see something 7 times for it to stick. That cumulatively, that really does help make a difference. You know, we're a partnership. We really do rely on our partners in town government to help us distribute information. And so if there are key people that you think would be helpful to distribute it to, or if there's a different format that you think would be helpful, I would love to see more people from Harwich come as well. And I think having buy-in, I mean, you're spending taxpayer money on it. I can't make Harwich board and committee members come, but you certainly could. But I'm always open to suggestion about how to help bolster those numbers.
So I'm glad to know that you do have some evergreen content that people can look back to. Do you ever have evening meetings as opposed to, because, you know, I'm still working, I can't come to a 10 o'clock meeting on, you know, in Truro or in Wellfleet or in Orleans on a random weekday without taking a vacation day, so.
They're Zoom now.
Are they all
They're
Zoom
all
now?
They're
Zoom.
Zoom. Yep, they're all Zoom, and.
I'm
the-
still not gonna stop.
I know
I'm
that.
not- still not
I
gonna
know
do
that.
it
I'm
in the
just
middle of the
telling you.
day. But I'm
So
just saying.
rescheduling is
Yeah.
always a challenge, and
Yeah.
for us, what it comes down to is that the demographic that we're trying to serve is board and committee members, and since most of our board and committee members across the region are in the evening, that like creates this big conflict that it's up against a select board meeting, it's up against this meeting. So I tried this year to really move around when things were going to be. The workshops we record, I hear frequently from people saying, this is a really interesting topic, I have a conflict. I tell them to register anyways because I send the recording, the slide decks, any materials that get discussed, I send those out automatically to everyone who's registered. We include all of our guest speakers from across the region, across the state. We include their contact information, and then I'll have people reach out to me and say, I missed this, can you give me 10 minutes about what happened? So we totally understand that we're not gonna get everybody, but I do try to make as much accommodation as I can to connect the people with the resources that they're looking for.
Just one other comment. Has there been any thought about doing a course on kind of the governor's add to this year's budget with ADUs? Because she put in as a matter of right. So, so I just didn't know whether you had anything like that on the books for the governors versus our local bylaws.
Yeah, so we did a lot of work around letting the towns know when they could participate in what is now the Affordable Homes Act in that process, and letting them know what was in it. So it was signed in August. The state said that by the middle of December, we would have draft regulations, or we would have regulations,
They're not there
period.
yet.
They're not gonna be ready. There are some draft ADU regulations. We also have the ADU Resource Center, which is a separate program. But as I mentioned, peer group in September, we did a standalone presentation about what was in that act and what's in the seasonal communities designation. And it is certainly our intention to keep, you know, if it needs a standalone session, we'll do a standalone workshop on it once we have more to talk about. If we can wrap it into peer group, we'll wrap it into peer group.
Okay,
But yeah, I
sounds
mean,
good.
that's a game changer for our
Right, it is,
region.
for
and
everybody.
we will continue. It's been very frustrating because everyone asks, I'm like, we just don't have any more news yet. Like, we're waiting on the state. But yes, that's absolutely going
Thank
to
you
be
for that.
a big shift. Thank you.
Great,
Also,
all set.
Kathy.
Yeah, I mean, we had this exact same conversation with the person last year regarding Harwich's participation, and that it was low last year, it had been low the year before, and that what were we going to do to try to change that? And it seems like it really hasn't changed. I don't know what the answer to that is, but, you know, one would think that any time that there is a change in the membership of the Affordable Housing Trust, or the Zoning Board, or even, you know, Community Preservation Committee, that people would want to take advantage of the information. I mean, I myself have taken quite a number of the Zoom courses, and they're very valuable. But how do we change the mindset here? Because we keep funding,
Yes.
but we don't get an increase in participation. And as a matter of fact, I noticed that the funding has gone from 7,500 to 10,000, and so could you explain that too?
Absolutely. So, to your first question, my team does track board and committee membership, and it is not unusual for us to reach out to new committee members to say, hey, we wanted to let you know that this is here for you. Do you have questions? Would you like to participate? You know, we can't make them come, so whether they attend or not is really up to them. I think that is where it is valuable for you as board members, is it the select board, is it the planning board, is it town staff, to follow up with like my email and say, this is really valuable as a resource and as an opportunity, and we pay for it, please consider attending. Like I have put a lot of work into not just Harwich, but a couple of other towns that have low attendance, to try to bolster this. If there's another thing that I can do that I'm not thinking of, I am happy to do it. I think having that sort of cross-culture of the people who have been there advocating and saying, no, I can vouch for this, this is really worth your time and it's really helpful, that it's almost like a culture shift. Would you remind me of the second part of your question? I'm so sorry.
The change in the amount of funding.
Oh, yes. So, like everything, costs have risen across the board, and we are a small nonprofit that is doing a lot with not a lot of dollars. But part of our mission as a nonprofit to keep people who can live, work, and thrive here is that we do try to pay our people livable wages. And so part of that was that the costs of everything has increased, and trying to keep up with that as the program costs increase as well.
I just think we need to balance, to continue to support something that we can't get our people to attend. I mean, and just, it's disappointing. So,
I would agree. Yeah, and I've, had a meeting with Joe Powers and Julie, and we talked through all of this as well. That, I think we're all in agreement that we would love to see more people from Harwich come. I'm effectively an outsider. I'm from a third-party organization, hawking a product. I think that within town hall recommendation or referral is really valuable, and that might be the variable that we tweak for this year. That if somebody wants to own being the champion or cheerleader for these programs, to help push it out to the boards and committees and see if maybe that makes a difference. I think that would be valuable.
I'll
Well,
second
yep.
it. Okay, is there anything else from any of the other board members? Hearing, seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Eric, you're up. Please identify yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Beebe. I'm the Recreation Director. I promise not to say the word "with" once at the end of my presentation. I'll just start with the first one. Brooks Park Infield Replacement Project. This is a request in the amount of $143,000. This project came to us at the suggestion of the DPW and Highway Department in town and the people that work on our fields daily. Brooks Park Baseball Field is one of the most sought-after fields on Cape Cod. It's used for a myriad of different groups, including the high school JV team plays there, sometimes the freshman team. A lot of our recreation programs. There's several AAU teams, Babe Ruth teams, junior Babe Ruth teams. There's special events like family reunions that we get all the time that play there. Company picnics, all kinds of things. It's just one more amenity in Brooks Park, which is one of our biggest draws in town, other than maybe the beaches. It is a high price tag, but it's the complete replacement of the infield. It would include all the laser grading of the new field, all new material. It would look exactly how it looks now. The reason it needs replacement is because it's becoming a safety concern. It hasn't been replaced in, I believe, over 20 years. There are lips from the grass to the dirt that's causing really bad hops on the infield for teams that play there. The Highway Department does work on that every year, but the amount that they're putting into it every year between man hours and materials to try to keep it safe, it's just becoming unfeasible. It's also, the wear and tear on the infield has created dips, and it's no longer graded flat, so when it rains, it does not drain properly at all. It puddles up huge in places, even with just a little rain. So, we want to maintain this field, because this and White House Field are considered two of the best fields there are. We want to maintain it for all the users, and, just keep Brooks Park the gem that it is. So, I'd be happy to answer and field any questions you guys might have.
Okay, we'll start with this. To the board, Mary.
I don't have any questions at this point.
Kathy.
Okay. All of the teams that you listed who use the field,
Yep.
do they use it just once, or are they constantly using it? I mean,
A lot of them are constant use.
Okay.
I think of the ones I put on here, these are mostly constant use, like the rec programs. The high school uses it all season long, every day, pretty much. Teams like Cape Cod Chaos, the Dugout Dogs, Senior Babe Ruth, they book it at least 20 to 30 times per season. So most of these are return users. On the bottom where I put private bookings, those are the one-offs.
Right,
Okay.
right. And this is the field next to the gazebo, right?
Yes.
Okay. I did read in your, in the proposal someplace, that talked about that there would be a need for an irrigation upgrade with the rotors and stuff. That said that, I don't know, I read it someplace. It said at the bottom of the estimate.
Oh, at the estimate.
Yeah, so, what are your thoughts about that, and?
Well, there's no, I think they were referring to maybe the outfield eventually. There's no irrigation on the infield, so.
Well, it says here, it does not include any irrigation rotor replacements. With the rehab of the field irrigation rotors, they should be replaced, or with a rehab of the field, irrigation rotors should be replaced at this time, is what their recommendation is.
Okay, they must have made an error, because there's no the little grass part on the inside of the infield has no irrigation within it.
Okay. All right, well, they made a mistake there. Maybe they made a mistake someplace else. What about the geese?
How to keep them away?
Well, I'm just saying, it doesn't add anything to the field
Yeah.
necessarily. Well,
It's been better lately. We're actually gonna be purchasing again. The problem we've had in the past, is we've purchased fake coyotes.
yeah, I have one. I have one.
And
She probably has one of ours.
I'm trying to come up with other solutions, because those get stolen
Oh,
all the time. They're probably in numerous college dorm rooms. But we have tried that. We're trying to come up with other solutions too, but they do tend to move around, and currently I've seen them more on the high school field in the front and also on the fields behind the community center. So we're chasing them down.
okay. So they don't
Dogs are out there.
they don't add to the degradation of the
Oh,
field
no,
necessarily?
no. It's just
Okay.
wear and tear.
It's wear and tear,
With the
okay.
plant over 20 years. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Fertilizing it, Kathy.
Yeah, I know, I know. Okay, I'm good.
They're good eating.
Those geese are good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, I need to think of things.
One way to get rid of them.
John?
Well, just, I'm sorry, it's a diversion, but on the geese, there's a guy in Sandwich who has border collies who
Well,
who will do that. Or why doesn't the rec department just get a border collie?
Eric, need a new
Chase them
dog?
to
Yeah.
my house. I'm sorry.
Police canine.
so I'll be adding
In the
another
afternoon.
request for
Yeah.
funding for a border.
So,
Right.
Another employee.
so I have a, you were referring to, you answered Kathy's question about irrigation by saying that the infield has no irrigation, but are you only renovating the infield?
Just the infield.
Just the infield.
Yeah.
And are you stripping the turf?
From the infield?
Yeah.
Yes, everything gets stripped out and replaced.
So, I forget what you called it, but the edge where the turf meets,
The grass, yep.
the grass meets the dirt,
Yep,
that's only a problem on the infield, it's not a problem behind second base, say?
we'll go there too. So
So,
anywhere where grass meets the infield,
It's part of the,
it'll be leveled up.
oh, you're leveling up,
Yeah,
I see,
yep.
okay.
Explain the infield to me, just because I don't play baseball.
What do you, like dimension-wise? or-
Yeah, like, so I'm looking at the picture,
see this?
okay?
See this?
Place you see dirt.
Yeah,
Right in there, well,
That's the
that's the infield.
that's,
Yeah,
so is 143,000 just for that little section?
Yeah, believe it or not, yeah.
But also to regrade the base path too, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a
And the-
laser
and the-
grading
and the-
and everything.
and the
yeah.
arc, so-
It has to be completely even. yeah.
So anything that you see that the green infields and the whole base path,
And
where
that's
it
the
meets the
dirt.
outfields.
Right.
The dirt, right? Because the bases are within the dirt
Yep.
arc, that's all gonna have to be regraded. So, just to help me in my
Is
brain.
the dirt done too?
Yes, so I'm assuming you're gonna have to dig out the dirt,
Yep,
refill it, regrade it,
Exactly.
repack it,
yep,
whatever, measure it, align it with
Yeah.
the Kentucky bluegrass that's coming in to
exactly.
fill in the infield.
Yep.
John, you have the floor.
So, my other question is, what are you doing about reducing or eliminating your addition of nutrients, i.e. fertilizer and/or herbicides, onto any of this? Has the rec department undertaken to look into having turf that is quality turf, but without all the fertilizer?
No, you'd have to speak with the DPW, they handle maintenance of the
John, you're talking about anything with grass. This has nothing to do with the grass.
Well, he
This
just
partic-
said he's
this-
replacing.
This application, no, that's the way it looks there, but it's not. This what
isn't
they're
there gonna
doing
be
is
grass?
the entire infield will be replaced.
With grass.
That's
in
grass.
Right, but it's not in the context that he wants to do.
Well,
He wants to see what
No,
the
no, no,
overall.
no, he's asking, what are they gonna do with this grass? Is it gonna be fertilized?
Can you use
They do
a
treat it.
turf product that, and can you do an installation that requires less fertilizer? So this is a groundwater problem for the town of Harwich. The town of Harwich owns, I don't know how many acres of recreational fields,
Right.
all of which get fertilizer. And so my question is, yes, it applies to the infield turf. It applies more broadly. I do believe that part of what you do, and I don't think I would actually support funding this without an explanation of what you're gonna do, or the the highway department is going to do about installing turf that does not contribute nutrient loading to our groundwater and cause the same problem we just had a discussion about earlier, which is we're sewering the town and spending an enormous amount of money. The second largest contributor to the nutrients that go into our saltwater embayments and our freshwater ponds is fertilizer that gets applied to turf of all sorts, private homes, public areas. So I would request that an explanation be made of what is being done to attempt to reduce the contribution of this project or any related project to nutrient loading in our groundwater.
I'll speak to DPW.
Okay. All set, John?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right. Emily?
When was the last time, if ever, this level of renovation has happened, and how long will it last? Like, when will be the next time you'll have to do it? And then, does this necessitate any different kind of approach to maintenance on a yearly basis to maintain it?
Yeah, it was well over 20 years ago, close to 25 years ago. Typically, an infield at the rate it's used, like Brooks Park baseball field, is around 15 years that you'd have to do something like this. This project will heavily reduce the maintenance that they'll have to do. As of now, they have to buy this stuff called turfus to fill in every year, constantly filling in, and that gets very expensive. They buy it by the pallet. That would be reduced significantly for quite a while after this is done. So that, and as well as man hours, DPW spends on it.
Thank you.
All set. Robert?
No, nothing. I'm good.
Marcy?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right.
Eric, is this figure based on a quote, an actual quote?
Yeah. Yep.
How many quotes did you get?
We have more than one quote, but this is the quote that was recommended by DPW as the people that, they did White House Field. They actually did Brooks Field way back. They do Fenway Park.
Okay.
This is.
So, just give us a little picture of what happened, because I'm not a ball player.
Mhm.
I go by there all the time, and it looks pretty good,
Mhm.
and I see the ducks up there or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, they scrape it down to a certain level.
Yep.
And then rebuild it, right?
Yep, and they refill it up.
Is there a special dirt they use, or what?
Yeah, it's in here. There is a special dirt. Well, it's Kentucky bluegrass for the grass, as mentioned. And
For that price, we should have special dirt.
yeah, this is, so it's some measurements of sand, and then the Dura Edge Native Premium.
Yeah, packing clay.
Yeah, that's the clay,
It's a
yeah.
composite.
Yeah, it's composite clay, so it's certain types they use. And then a lot of this is all that DPW would know better than I would, exactly what the materials are.
And by any chance, does this contract include come back the next year, or for a period of time to make sure it's working, or,
No, I
or is
mean,
it just one and done?
Yeah, it's one and done. There's no maintenance contract to it or anything like that. maintenance on the project itself will be done by DPW as usual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Product warranty, is that what you're looking
So if
for?
it starts to, say on one of the baselines, it starts to sink, I'm just,
Oh, yeah, well, there'd be stipulations written up in
They would
the
come back and-
contract that, yeah, anything unforeseen like that they can
Okay.
come back, yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Been around, does anybody else from the board have any questions? Hearing none, moving on.
Our next one is the Sand Pond Restroom additional funding request. We're trying to, this is an old request that has been funded through the CPC that we're trying to get completed, trying very hard to get completed. The original request was for funding for a new restroom at Sand Pond, in addition to a new septic system that had to be put in. The new septic system is in, so that's positive. The original plan, on the recommendation of the DPW, was to go for a stick-built restroom at Sand Pond, as opposed to the standard precast concrete one that we have at all the other beaches. The stick-built restroom, we put out to bid twice. We got 0 bids. We put it out to bid a third time, and we got bids that were 2 to 3 times higher than what was expected. The DPW suggested that we pivot back to the precast concrete restroom that you see at all our other beaches, and as well as behind the community center, the Veterans Memorial Complex. It would be the same exact restroom facility, but the price on that facility has gone up as well. Not as high as the stick-built quotes that we got, but the concrete one is currently at $131,000. When we first started putting those in, they were about 60.
Yeah.
So this is for the additional funding to get that completed. Like I said, as of now, the septic system, the new septic system is in. It was designed, engineered, and put in. In the meantime, it was hooked into the current bathroom, so it was still usable until we get the new facility in there. So we're just desperately trying to finish this project up. So.
Okay, I'll open it up to the board. Marcy?
So you're saying there's the current bathroom, so what is the issues with the current bathroom?
The current bathroom.
Is it not up to code, or?
It's actually not up to code for all the ADA accessibility, but it's also kind of, it's not very pretty to look at, but that's beside the point. They're having all kinds of issues with rust coming through on the inside. Plumbing is an issue. They're having more and more issues with it. So it was decided a couple years back that it was at the end of its useful life, and it's even more at the end of its useful life now than it was. So it's definitely a necessary upgrade to the beaches.
Thank you.
I think the word is gross.
Bro, yeah, there you go.
Robert, you're up.
We did paint it.
You have the floor.
Oh, no, it's been a long road on this, and
Yeah.
you're right, it was a $100,000 project to start with.
I
and
know,
it's just,
and
the
things
price
just
just
keep
goes
rocking.
crazy.
Yep.
So, yeah, no other questions.
Okay, thank you. Emily?
I'm all set with this, so thank you.
All right,
Okay, so, you alluded to the fact that you have some funds left over.
Yep.
You can expend, and the 33,000 is just to make it whole.
To cover it, yeah.
And you have a quote for that,
Yes,
and it's gonna look like the one at Red River Beach?
yes, exactly like that one, Long Pond, all of them really, except for Bank Street, that's the one outlier. It's the same, it's a precast concrete restroom, they drop it right in with a crane, you get all the hookups and a concrete pad, yeah. And they're supposed to last for 99 years, yeah,
No, don't worry
that'll
about
cover us, yeah.
no, we won't.
it. And this is kind of deviating a little bit, but is that restroom, how's it maintained?
The concrete ones,
Yeah, well, no, I mean, who maintains it?
the DPW maintains it. The most we've really had to done is do some painting here on current.
I mean, on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, like toilet paper, things like that? That's, yeah, the DPW has a contract
They farm it out,
with
okay,
with a firm that does
and
that.
it gets done.
Yep,
Thank you.
All set. John?
Yeah, my only question is, you have a firm quote, so if this money gets approved, you are certain that this is going to finish the job here? There isn't
Yeah,
like-
so I talked to Shea Concrete.
No pun
Did
intended,
you
right,
really
John?
ask that?
Shea Concrete. who's done-
Somebody's gotta ask the question.
No, it's a good question. Shea Concrete, who's done all, they're pretty much the precast concrete restroom people. They've done all the other restrooms. They gave me this newest quote for the concrete. I explained to them that, the way funding works, has to go through this, it has to go through town meeting, funding becomes available July 1. Can't do it in the middle of the summer, so next fall, will this number stand? And they have affirmed for me that this number will be the number.
Thank you.
All set, John.
Yeah.
Kathy?
So this is basically a $200,000 restroom.
Yep.
Is this the most expensive restroom in the town of Harwich?
As compared to what?
I mean, is this the most that we've ever,
It's the most we've ever spent on a precast concrete beach restroom, yes.
for a 16 and a half by 8-foot
Yep.
building?
And the stick-built one, I believe the quote for the stick-built was 165 just for the building.
And this is something that operates 3 months of the year
Yep.
and then gets locked down for the rest of the year?
We usually lock it up right around Columbus Day, so maybe 4 months. Yeah.
Okay, and could I ask, why is there a hot water tank and heater for
Health
it?
regulation says you have to have hot water there.
Really?
Yep, I asked the same thing,
It's crazy.
I know.
That's it.
All set, Kathy.
All my questions were answered. I think I was on planning board when you came in for
First one.
the first one, so.
My legacy is gonna be bathrooms.
But you did say you've gone out to bid already in the bid signed, or do you have to then rebid, and
Oh, we didn't.
is it just quotes?
Just quote. We went out to bid, but we turned down the bid
Yeah.
for the stick built. It was way higher than what we
Yeah.
had available.
All set.
Yeah, time passes and things get more expensive, right?
All right, Eric, continue, please.
Third one, the Veterans Memorial Field Complex Shade Structure Project. I gave a handout because I wanted my budget summary in there. We had originally gotten a quote. So the good news is, I'd like to reduce my request by $10,000 to $90,000 from the $100,000. We had gotten an original quote that we were basing our numbers on, that they mistakenly put in a concrete pad under the shade structure and some other parts of it that we didn't need. So I was waiting for the new quote without the concrete pad, and we got it today. So that's the numbers that are on that budget summary. It's a shade structure of 30 by 30 for the Veterans Memorial Field Complex behind the community center. Currently, that complex is also used for a huge variety of activities, big special events, tons of rec programs, especially our after-school program that runs year-round, and our summer camp. When we have our summer camp out there, there's really no shade for the kids to get under. We do have the building, but the building can be packed sometimes. So if it starts raining or that we need shade, this would be a great option. We really like the idea of the shade. If you see the picture, it would be exactly like that without the concrete pad, as opposed to a pavilion like at Brooks Park that we put in. These shades that you see, or they also call them sails, those can be taken down. They will be taken down every winter. They're easily taken down, stored, and then put back up. That'll keep longer lasting life on those. They're wind resistant up to code. It would consist of 4 poles like seen here, and we keep a natural grass underneath, as it is, with some picnic tables and a place for the kids to hang out, get out of the sun a little bit in the summer. We also think that putting in something like this back there would increase bookings for more picnics, things that are currently overbooked at Brooks Park often, where we can't accommodate everyone because we get so many requests for picnics, company picnics, reunions, all kinds of things. With the fields there, the open field, You have the building right there, and then you have a shade structure out back where you can have an outdoor picnic. We think it'd be a great amenity to add to that complex, along with the softball field, the baseball field, the multipurpose field, and the restroom facility that's currently there. So, thank you.
Okay, open it up to the board. Kathy?
Yeah, so some of the same groups that you listed that use Brooks Field, use this field also, so
Yep.
like, so you said some of them use the field constantly, so do they use this one constantly too, or?
They do. Yeah, a lot of these
So-
groups, yeah, like the high school, the freshman team uses the baseball field over here. All our, like I said, it's a ton of our rec programs that run back there, just because the building's right there. But some of the ones that are doubled up, like Dugout Dogs Baseball, Cape Coastal Baseball, they have multiple teams at multiple age levels. So they'll be playing, you know, many games. They'll book 20 to 30 bookings at Brooks Park, 20 to 30 bookings behind the community center as well, separately.
So the rec programs, where do they take place on this field?
Everywhere. We have T-ball programs on the baseball, on the softball field. We have rec travel softball on the softball field. We have flag football. We have our travel soccer league. We have soccer clinics. It's throughout the whole complex we use.
Well, okay, so the picture,
Yep.
when you say the whole complex, you're talking about this big square here, because the shade structure is pretty far removed from,
Yeah.
like, the action.
Yeah, and the reason
You know.
we had to kind of put it there is because anywhere else we'd really look to put it could infringe upon the actual the playing area. We don't want to stick it in the middle of the field.
Right.
So, you know, we can put it off to the side a little bit, and we feel that it would still get good use over there.
So without a concrete pad,
Yep,
so we're requesting $90,000 for some posts and some sailcloth, basically.
yep,
Okay,
that's what it costs.
okay.
Sailcloth's expensive.
Yeah, I guess so. So there was an estimate in your original quote for picnic tables.
Yep.
2 picnic tables for 1,000, and now we have 6 picnic tables for 6,000. So
That
that's
was-
sort of like tripled.
That was just showing, that was just showing what they cost per. I didn't,
Well, it says quantity 2, 6-foot picnic tables, and then the total was $1,000, right?
Yeah.
And now there's $6,000 for 6 of them,
that
so.
was just, that was a quote was put in there to indicate what we currently spend on picnic tables per unit.
Okay, so these are special picnic tables, or?
No, we're looking for 6 picnic tables.
I know, I'm just saying that the quote is vastly different.
She's
This
saying
was
the quote was.
This is just
they
to
were half
show
price.
how much
Yeah.
they cost per unit.
Yeah, they cost $600 minus the discount, so $500 per unit, and now they're costing $1,000 a
Oh, I
unit.
see what you're saying. Did I put in the wrong-
So I mean, like, are they
I think you are correct.
more special?
They're
I
not
mean,
more special.
I'm just trying to understand
No,
people.
I totally get what you're saying.
Eric may be more special, but I don't know if the.
I
You're
guess.
right, you're absolutely right. I will adjust that.
Okay.
Yep.
And my final question is, so the DPW is prepared to mow around the picnic tables?
Yep.
Okay.
The addition of a concrete pad of that size would significantly increase the price as well. So.
Okay. I'm good.
I'll second. Mary?
I guess Eric just answered my question, because I was thinking along the same lines as Kathy, why, if you're spending that kind of money, why aren't you putting a concrete pad? Because I would think the maintenance underneath the sailcloth with mowers and moving and doing all that is gonna be more hassle than it's worth. I would think the concrete pad would make it a more permanent structure and might be a better improvement, my own 2 cents worth, but, like, if I thought it was only $10,000, I'd be all for it. I'd say keep the 100 and let's look at it that way, but,
It'd probably be closer to around 30,000 for a pad of that size.
the pavilion at Brooks Park has a concrete pad under it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't
That's a smaller area.
No, I
Yeah.
know that, I was kind of thinking along the lines of it's a lot of money to spend for, I understand it's installation, I understand that it is, sailcloth is expensive and labor is expensive, and I get all that. Part of me thinks that if you're going to do a structure, do the structure and just do it. Put the concrete pad in and then have something better that will last longer.
I have one
Just
more
food for
question.
Okay, let me go around the board first. Emily?
Question on the sales themselves. I've had these at my house. I've had them, my friends have had them. I've sat under them or kind of under them at restaurants. Is this engineered to actually, like, block the sun? Because I've never been in an instance where it's done, and obviously the sun moves, so there's going to be, I've never seen them be very efficient and effective. Like, is this done, like, positioned exactly where the sun comes so that we know that the tables and this section is going to be shaded? Or is there a different way to?
The way they connect them to the poles is supposed to block out as much sun as possible.
Okay.
They are getting more and more popular than pavilions like you see at Brooks Park now, as a shade
Is there
structure.
an example of one, like, I know probably wouldn't be up right now with this seasonally, but like, is there one?
I'd have to, let me shoot you guys an email on that. I can give you a whole list of them. I have them, yeah,
Awesome.
some examples, yeah, sure.
All set.
All set.
They are like UV resistant too.
Yeah.
That's
I just, again, it might be that I'm just incapable of putting them up correctly, or the place, it's just very challenging for them to be utilized,
Correctly.
yeah, positioned correctly, exactly.
John?
Yeah, okay, I have a couple questions. One is, and this applies back to the baseball field too. There are a number of non-town of Harwich organizations that you list there as frequent users. My question, and several years ago, when you were doing which other baseball field in town, one of the organizations involved raised a bunch of money to contribute to whatever that project was.
That was the men's senior softball
The
league.
senior softball league. So my question is, have you looked into the willingness of any of these other organizations that depend on these fields for their programs to raise funds to implement what you're proposing here?
We haven't talked to anybody to chip into this project. This would benefit the rec department most prominently out of anybody. A lot of these, like AAU baseball teams, unless they get caught in a rainstorm, I don't see them using it too much to the point where we would ask them for help with the funding for this project. It would be most beneficial to us, the town department.
Aren't some of those programs, though, non-AAU programs, but youth, like high school kids?
Yeah, there's the high school as well. They don't currently have in their budget, they don't typically help us out with too many of the projects in town, including they do pay though for the use of the fields. So that's one way of, them contributing.
So that's the other half of my question. Where do
Okay.
the funds go that those programs pay for the use of the
So,
fields?
so for instance, the school when the school pays for the use of the fields, that money goes into the rec department revolving fund,
I see.
which can be used for small maintenance projects if we needed to get a new sail to replace one of the sails or repair something. That's how we would do it.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, which follows up on Mary's and Kathy's and Mary's, I'm not sure. Which is the highway department confident that with all that shade, they can maintain a healthy lawn under the shade? And, I mean, wouldn't it be terrible if that lawn began to degrade and there was no lawn there, it was just dirt and dust in the middle of it?
I did speak with DPW before, our field guy Jared, that does all the fields, about it beforehand, and he was in favor of the way we proposed it, so he must be confident that he can keep it.
Is there gonna be any replanting or overseeding over there to get a grass variety there that that is more tolerant to shade? Because
Not in the plans, no.
How about fertilizer?
Concrete
Go
salt.
Go ahead, egg 'em on. Egg 'em on.
That's fair enough.
Okay, Johnny, you all
you
set?
asked the question.
No, I'm good.
Robert?
On what is the warranty on the sales?
The sales, I should have more info on that by tomorrow, actually, so I can send it out to you. But the sales themselves usually have at least a 10-year warranty.
But that's probably a declining warranty,
Yeah, yeah.
10% per year.
Yep.
These sales are notorious for getting messed up, mildew and all
Well, that's
kinds
why,
of things.
yeah, and that's why we can, they're very easily taken down. We would store them in the off-seasons. So as, you know, they're not designed to be snow-bearing or anything like that. So they'd be taken in every, once the season's over.
Yeah, long-term maintenance, I think a shed like at Brooks Park would be better, my opinion. Just because I know these things do degrade pretty quickly and they're not cheap.
No, yeah.
To replace them,
yeah.
they're very expensive.
Oh, yeah,
So,
sure.
I'm not crazy about that for that reason. Also, even though you have a list of a bunch of people, just observation, I see a lot of activity at Brooks Park. I see a lot less activity in this field back there. Time when I'm there, I don't know, but it just seems like less activity.
I don't know what to tell you. It's very used, yeah.
That's it.
What's that, Robert? Hart?
First of all, I'm gonna start out by saying, I have one of these in the back of my house, and I love it. Okay? In fact, I'm buying another one next year. End of that. What was the size that you said again?
The whole area would be 30 by 30. That's what
Oh,
the
30 by
poles would
30.
cover, yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything that big. And it's just a sunshade. It's not like canvas. It's kind of protective if it rains.
No, I mean, you can get under it in a pinch
Yeah.
to help you out. But yeah, it's mostly for
Yeah,
sunshade.
it makes the big drops, smaller drops.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you got a quote for this, right? This is-
Yes, yep, and I will forward that over as well, but we got the
And who's the company you
O'Brien and Sons. They do a lot of these shade structures all over. They do tons of our playground equipment, playground repair. They specialize in, they're out of Medway, Mass.
I bought mine from a place out in Arizona, just digressing.
Okay.
And it looks like the picture here, and called Tenco.
Okay?
And I thought mine was expensive.
Yeah.
And I spent, of course, I'm not 30 by 30. I have a rectangle, and it's 18 by 14
Mhm.
rectangle.
Mhm.
And I swear, I would let that stay up in the middle of a hurricane because it's so well.
Yeah, yep.
Constructed.
All built.
And I've had mine for 4 or 5 years now, and no deterioration at all. If it's a comparable product.
Yep.
they're very good. But I didn't spend anywhere near $90,000
No, yeah, sure.
for mine.
And it would go out to bid, so hope,
And, it wouldn't be a hard project for our in-town people to put that up. Just to sink 4 poles in the ground,
We could-
concrete them in, and
we could talk to DPW more about installation, to see if if it's something that they feel comfortable doing.
you know, 4. so you
To
need
reduce
4
the
poles.
cost. Yep.
And ground concrete. But the overall cost, I'm kind of, I know what I paid for mine, so.
And we decided to go in this way for several reasons, but also because the pavilions, like the one at Brooks Park, you're talking probably twice as much money for what we put up over there.
Anything stick-built today is gonna be
Yeah.
I
expensive.
think it's a good idea to get out of the sun.
Yeah.
But I'll leave it.
All set up. Anybody else from the board? Kathy?
Yeah, I just want to, so the sails or the shade themselves are going to be taken down in the fall and then put back up in the spring.
Yeah.
Is that going to be done by rec department or DPW?
Probably a little of both. The company told us it's very easy to take put up and take down. But, you know, DPW can do it for us as well. They said it doesn't take long at all. They kind of clip in and they just clip out and fold them up and you store them somewhere where they could stay dry.
Okay, all right. That's it, just wanted to check.
And where mice don't get at them, and
Yeah.
they have to be dry so they don't get mildewed.
Especially if you're folding them up.
Speaking with having had an awning for
Yeah.
most of my life.
Okay, anything else? Marcy?
Just a quick question, we were discussing, so you'd mentioned, like, if in an event that it was damaged, that you would look for recreation funds to repair it, so you wouldn't be coming back to CPC? to
No,
look
we
for
couldn't
additional
come back
funds?
for maintenance of things anyway, through CPC. So if there were minor repairs or anything like that, we can use our rec revolving fund to pay for those.
Okay, thank you.
All set, board members. Kathy?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do you think there's going to be much of a chance of vandalism for those?
I don't believe they're gonna be easy to get to the sales. They'd have to bring a ladder of some sort to get up there, I think.
Or stand at a picnic table?
Yeah, I still think they would be tough to reach.
Okay.
I don't anticipate any
Okay.
vandalism issues, but I can forward over, like you said, some other examples of them on the Cape, and I will contact them to see if they've had any issues.
That would
in
be
the
good,
past. But
yeah.
I haven't heard of any, but I'll ask.
Okay, thanks.
All set?
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, so that takes care of the projects. Whole business. Update on social media, Facebook.
So I'm working on a collection of posts, just trying to get a bunch of them done for the new year, so I'll be able to share those shortly. And then I have been in touch with the library. I did finally hear back. They have some changing roles and responsibilities, so working through that, but they said that they could still support us, so going to work with them once I finalize that, again, collection of posts. And then I have been going back and forth with Cindy of the Chamber, and I'm gonna try to meet with her next week. She did mention, in addition to social support, that there might be some email, like e-blast stuff that she could help us with, so I'm gonna talk with her about that.
Awesome.
Outstanding. Questions from the board? All set? Thank you. Okay, moving on. Website and online application.
I have nothing new. It's gonna be time pretty soon to start thinking about getting ready for next year's, but not yet. I also, Kathy asked me to refresh her memory about what updates I was looking for on the
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Don't apologize. I should be apologizing. Nothing new to report. It's going to be time to start thinking about preparing for next year's cycle. And the only thing that I have outstanding that I haven't done that I need to do is get Kathy some information about what needs updating. That is just status updates on the webpage. I promised her after last week's meeting, I think it was, that I would, and
No
I
rush.
didn't. But I will get that to you,
Okay.
Kathy. In fact,
She can be very demanding.
okay.
Anything else from any
Away.
board member? Okay, moving on. Next agenda points, calendar dates. What are we thinking?
Well, if we're still the second Thursday,
Can you remove the mask so we can hear you, please?
if we're still the second Thursday of the month, I have the dates. Do you want me to read them real quick?
Go ahead.
Jan 9th, Feb 13th, March 13th, April 10th, May 8th, June 12th, July 10th, August 14th, September 11th.
Okay, hold, time
Okay,
out, time out.
like I said, so it's always the second Thursday of the month,
Okay, fair enough.
and I don't know if we'll need more meetings in January, February to go over the projects.
Okay, how are we gonna, to the board, we're gonna start our deliberations. What dates do we wanna start? 1st of January, on forward? You wanna wait till latter part of January? I know you're having, like,
No, my issue is more if the auditor said that she was hoping to get us numbers by the end of January. I mean, I think we could have follow-up meetings in January, but I think that's gonna tell us that the meeting in February is gonna be when we'd have real numbers and be able to have confidence in what we had available and what we were spending.
To take actual votes.
My 2 cents worth, just,
Okay.
rather than reinventing the wheel twice.
Anybody else? Thoughts? John?
Just a question, what are our deadlines that we're working to here? If we get started deliberating in February, how does that, like, compress the deliberations?
It'll make it difficult because we may want to bring people back in for questions, or we submit questions to them, so.
So I'll clarify, my
Go ahead,
comment
go
was
ahead.
to be prepared to take votes at the February meeting. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't deliberate, but we wouldn't know I don't know that we'll have fund numbers until they're done with their job, and if they report out the numbers the end of July, then, hopefully by the second Thursday in February, we would have numbers. If we've done our deliberation, we've done our due diligence, and we kind of have a sense of what we're going to do, we could look towards having motions prepared for that next meeting, was my thought. That's where I was coming from.
Pleasure of the board. Robert?
I would suggest having the 9th meeting, but let's earmark the 23rd as a possible second meeting now, as more, follow-up,
In what month are you talking about?
January. So we'd have 2 meetings before we hit February.
Other board members? All right,
Well, the earlier you start, the earlier you're gonna finish, So I agree with Bob, let's load it up as much as we can handle in January.
board members?
I'm fine with those dates. I know Renee said something about, well, she didn't give us a concrete, but she's hoping the end of January. So would that mean another meeting in January, or is that going to be part of the February meeting?
We don't know.
Yeah, right.
Tough to answer that one.
Most likely the February meeting, and we have numbers, we have numbers. I mean, but I don't see, I'm never comfortable until I know what we've kind of agreed on, what the numbers are to look at, and I just think, we're spinning our wheels if we start voting or start talking about numbers and we don't know what's there to spend. So, that's.
We can do what we've done the past couple of years. We take the base line of the levy, 3% of the levy. We take 300,000 roughly for state, or whatever the state number
It
is.
is
It's out,
355, yep.
okay? And then we take the 25 grand in interest that's on the 6 million. We have a baseline we can go by.
Yeah.
Right, but what Mary is saying is that,
I understand what
If we're
Mary's
gonna
saying.
have real numbers, why don't we wait for the real numbers?
well, I think what she's implying too is that we don't know what's in the existing buckets right now, trued up,
Above and beyond.
trued up. And that is
Fair enough.
somewhat helpful for people when we're deliberating. But I do think that when our first meeting in January, that we should talk about the merits of each of the applications.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Agree wholeheartedly. My focus was really, I don't know that we should contemplate doing the motions with the amounts and the approvals until the meeting in February.
Right.
I'm not saying not to vet them, I'm not saying not to go through all of that process. I think we need to do that, because we've only just had our first meetings with these people.
Right.
So-
We might have additional questions.
Right,
and-
exactly. No, I'm totally fine with that. I just, looking at timing, I wouldn't think
Okay,
we'd be
so
able to vote until then.
we all agree on that pretty much? What are the dates gonna be?
The 9th, with an optional meeting on the 23rd. That's easier to cancel after the 9th than it is setting up a new one.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Bob.
Members of the board?
Sounds reasonable to me.
Sounds fine.
Okay?
Kevin?
Yeah, I guess so.
February 13th is February 13th is our second Thursday. Do you want to move that up a week?
No, we do not.
Thank you, Kathy.
We do not. We want to keep our February meeting as is.
Okay, so we have the dates again, Robert? The 9th and the
9th and the 23rd.
23rd.
I make that motion.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
So Jan, do you have that? Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything else that anybody wants on the agenda for our next meeting?
Are we going to continue the discussion about the contribution or the potential for change in the percentage of CPA funding that might or might not be supported by the Board of Selectmen?
We can continue that discussion.
A space holder would be nice if there was information available for us to discuss.
Anything else?
Can we ask them to turn off the air conditioning in here? It's like my office at work, same thing. It's like 12 degrees in here.
Okay, do I hear a motion? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.